Hey, what's up? This is Andrew H. Kim, and welcome to Photons and Feelings podcast. And today we have Evan Rummel.
That's me.
Yeah, so just wanted to kind of talk today, just catch up, see how you're doing, and then we're also going to talk about the Adobe Creative Residency.
Exciting.
Yes.
Very exciting stuff.
Last time we talked on podcast, it was back in Brooklyn. We're just kind of...
Yeah, it was summertime?
Yeah.
It was over the summer?
Yeah. You want to catch us up on what you've been up to since?
So we got to work on a project last year together
Mm-hmm.
in the spring, which was one of the more fun projects I think I'd worked on. Certainly one of the more stressful, rapidly, kind of a rapid learning environment, where you had to learn business really quickly and legal really quickly and, deal memos, contracts, all that kind of stuff pretty much on the fly.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a fun experience. I think it's one of those where it definitely accelerates kind of how your creativity flows, how your mind works in terms of building relationships, because it was really an eye-opening experience in terms of being a photographer as a businessman, not just as a creative. Because I think there's two lines you have to draw.
Yeah.
When you're a creative, especially as a photographer, because there's plenty of great photographers out there that are just awful at business.
Yeah.
And they always wonder, why am I not growing? Why am I not getting more stuff? Am I doing the work or am I not doing the work? A lot of it comes down to, do you just know how to run a business?
Right. And like 90%, 95% of it is business.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like you shoot hardly ever.
Yeah. I mean, for the, what was it? 6-8 weeks, I think, of production work I think I did on it, 10, 12 hours of it was actually shooting.
Right.
And even then most of that was just speaking. And then, it was, half of that you could say was probably actually pulling the trigger. So hours compared to weeks and months, of work. So,
yeah.
And then of course, then there's the aftermath of that, where it's the months later where, where you're doing your taxes, and you're making sure that you've
Don't
actually
forget to
saved.
get those 1099s in.
Exactly. The 1099s.
January 31st is coming up.
My God, they are the death of me. I hate them so much.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think it was a cool year. It was certainly the biggest project I'd ever worked on. It was the biggest year I'd had as a creative in New York. And it's cool, even though 1099s and doing all your taxes suck, it's really cool to see how, some personal goals of, pushing myself as a creative were kind of attained. Even though they weren't attained as much as I wanted, I still passed milestones. I still passed kind of thresholds as a creative. So doing all of that alongside of still being a full-time student, was fun, tiring, but it was fun to kind of have multiple milestones kind of captured in a year amidst still trying to break out and still kind of,
right,
because it's one of those where, like, even if people didn't know my name, it's still totally fine,
right,
as long as I'm still doing what I like.
Cool. And by the way, that's Gates as in Bill Gates, right?
Yes. Mr. and Mrs.
Somebody named Bill, perhaps William. No,
started Microsoft or something
like that. Yeah. So I guess I forgot to properly introduce you to any new listeners. What is your background? What do you do? Who are you and what do you do?
My name is Evan Rummel and I am a photographer in New York City. My background is former military turned barista turned missionary turned videographer, kind of traveler turned photographer, kind of director.
Okay.
And so I've kind of had a hodgepodge of different experiences. I forgot I was a team leader at Lowe's.
Nice.
Inside lawn and garden for the win. So I've kind of had just a very eclectic background of just random jobs. But they've all kind of intertwined with one another and kind of led to a pursuit of a creative field, especially in New York, which is, the central birthing ground, with the exception of like an LA or, something like that.
Not even close.
Not even, but it's such a different,
it's
such a different world. New York creatives are just very different than LA creatives.
Yeah.
There's such a different mentality out here. Taking everything I could get and then doing every different kind of, photography, from weddings to kind of journalistic stuff to NGO kind of travel work to portraiture to fashion to just kind of a variety of different things, so that I felt like people could hire me for anything, and I felt that was a bonus to be kind of a jack of all trades, forgetting that then you can't be really good at one thing. So for me, it's slowly transition more into kind of a fashion portraiture. So not necessarily shooting, runway type of stuff, but more kind of fashion inspired portraiture, much more on the cinematic level, much more on the kind of deeper soul level of people, so that you get kind of a raw emotion versus glamour 1980s headshots,
right?
Which aren't bad, but it's that's not the market anymore.
Right,
it's more of a comedy market. So
yeah, kind of taking that and segueing into the Adobe Creative Residency.
Yeah.
How did you hear about this?
Well, last year I remember you had started up a project of yours, and I remember kind of watching some of the content you had kind of posted as teasers, and kind of being around you, working through that, and it didn't really occur to me to think about it. I didn't have anything tangible I wanted to work on. I think sometimes there's just moments where you don't have projects, but this year, around July, August, I started conceptualizing a project just on my own, that had kind of been in my head for a better part of a year and a half. And talking to Wes, a number of times, it was kind of a conversation that pushed me out of a fear mentality of, hurdles and, well, what if it fails? What if it doesn't work? What if it's too expensive? And it kind of jumped out of that kind of fear-based into more of opportunity-based and more of I might as well do it. So I started launching just kind of a personal portrait project of mine that, ironically, as the semester ended, my professors started emailing me about this the Adobe Residency. And when I started looking through the guidelines, the details of it, that it was very passion-oriented, that it was very personal project-oriented, that it was something that would basically complement what you were already working on or what you wanted to work on in lieu of, giving up what would potentially be full-time work.
Yeah. And just in case you're not aware of what the Adobe Creative Residency is it's this artist residency, and it could be multiple genres. It doesn't have to be just photography.
Yeah,
it could be design,
web stuff, like
painting, anything creative where you would potentially use Adobe products, obviously. But basically, you are an employee for 1 year, and you get to work on your passion project, which submit a proposal. I mean,
not many companies do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a dream, right?
Yeah.
Like, you get paid a salary to do what you want to do, and I think the exposure that gives you is just incredible in itself. It just elevates kind of like the reach that you can attain with this kind of residency. Anyway, so I had heard about it a couple years back, maybe, just by getting into like the YouTube world and seeing how vloggers are starting to emerge a couple years ago. And I think I saw Sarah Dietschy somehow on a linked video, and through her and like just being immersed in that kind of YouTube vlogger world, I heard about this residency, and then I looked into it, and then I said, okay, I'd love to apply next year. So I applied that following year, which was last year. And I'll probably upload my application video, maybe all of it, maybe part of it. I'm not sure yet. But I'll upload in another follow-up video, my application for last year. I was so excited because I found out about the residency, I don't know, maybe like February of the year. And I had basically a whole year to think about, the application will open up next February. I had a whole year to think about it and anticipate. And like, I just really wanted to like do this. And obviously I didn't get it. And I was so disappointed. And I knew the chances were very slim, obviously, because there's, I don't know, maybe a few thousand that applied last year. It's probably going to be much more than that this year. Which
is still, I mean, a few thousand. It's still small considering Adobe's reach and Adobe's. Right. I mean, their criteria is not that demanding, but it's more, I think, an idea of like who's actually thinking about this kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So like I felt disappointed mainly because I did a video application. I did like the teaser and then followed up with all the application was different last year than it is this year. It's similar, same concepts, but like it was just the format was different. They had you actually type out your answers to like 6 or 7 questions. I think this year it's just kind of more open format.
Yeah, it's proposal based or video based.
Right. So I answered all those questions, but I also answered the questions on video. So I uploaded a video. The teaser was like a minute long. And then kind of like the elevator pitch was right after that. And then I went into detail. So it ended up being like a 13-minute video of answering all the questions on video. Anyway, like I uploaded to YouTube, private link, and I sent them the link, and they're the only ones who have that link. And I was just, waiting for that view count to go from 0 to 1, and like it just never did for the longest time.
Yeah.
And finally it went up, and then I saw they only watched like maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh man, I put in so much work. There was like a year of anticipation, and like it just didn't happen. And so like I realized like while I was putting the proposal together, I was like, because like one of the things they're looking for is this a project that you're doing to propose for this project, or is it something that you would do on your own anyway?
Right.
And like they're looking for those people that are pursuing what they want to do already.
Exactly.
And so as I was putting together like this project in a more formal, besides just in my heads, just ideas running in my head, I realized like, this is like a plan that I could follow and like do and like make this project actually come to life.
Yeah.
And so like that was kind of like one of the side cool benefits of it, is like it forced me
Exactly.
to lay out like actual steps to follow. Granted, the following year, because I didn't get the residency and also having a child.
Oh, Penny.
Yes.
Insert cute picture.
Yeah. Life gets in the way. So, that's the cool thing about this residency, is it allows you that freedom to like not worry about having to make money.
Yeah.
And focus on the project. So anyway, it's kind of taken me a year, but we moved into this new space, and I'm starting to build that setup, more semi-permanent setup for that project. And so this year I'm looking to actually do it.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I was going to reapply again, maybe not. But regardless, I found that it was valuable for me to go through that step, because now I'm actually going to do it, although it's on a slightly shorter or longer timeline.
Right. That's always been like when my teacher sent it to me, I remember looking through it and thinking, oh, this is great. And they hadn't opened up the application yet. But I already had Evernote documents. I already had, I was aiming for between 30 and 50 people to photograph, but I'd already photographed 30. So it's one of those where I'd already had enough work done that explaining it was actually really easy.
Yeah.
And then you start getting psyched up in your room, and I'm throwing on some, EDM and just like house music just to get me pumped up.
Yeah.
Some like deep bass that's just like psyching up my bones, and I'm just like preaching to myself into a mirror, basically reiterating what the pitch would be.
Right.
And start trying to condense it down, because obviously you do need that elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Between floors 0 and 5, that you could just tell someone and get them, jazzed. But then you also need to explain it after that.
Yeah.
And it was one of those where I was like, well, I've already been working on this for like 4 months anyway.
Yeah.
It's just going to take me longer,
Yeah.
because I might not have the resources or the time, because as a freelancer, you could easily give up a year and go, whoa, this is a huge stepping stone to be an Adobe resident. And it was one of those where, not to like over romanticize it and say I'm going to win, but it was enough for me to go, there's no hurdles mentally for me, aside from the fear of rejection.
Right.
To say, oh, I'm already going to do this anyway.
Yeah.
So it lines up with Adobe's values to say,
right.
What's a project that basically emanates from your being that you want to complete, that you can't because of hurdles.
I did, in my research of the residency, I did kind of look into the previous winners, and I think a far majority of them somehow had some kind of inside connection. And I don't mean that in like a shady way, but it's like, I think for Sarah Dici, she heard about the residency somehow, and I'm probably butchering this, but she heard about the residency and then she wanted to do it. So she found any way she could to put herself in front of the people that are the right people to be in touch with. She did like promo videos or like, event summary videos, so that she can kind of put herself out there and get on their radar. And I think some of the other residents somehow like knew somebody or met somebody before the whole residency. So then a lot of them came up as suggestions. People who worked at Adobe just threw up suggestions. Oh, check out this person. So I feel like, that kind of does hurt your chances in terms of like, a random person applying, like myself.
Roll the dice.
Yeah. So it is one of those things where it's super exciting, but also don't get your hopes up too much. Yeah. But I think that's one of the things that I did learn about this whole experience of applying and not getting it last year was, is for me personally, it's not about like applying to some dream thing and getting it. It's about not being afraid to just put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And if you get rejected, it's just a numbers thing. Like it's like dating, right? It's like you're gonna get rejected.
Exactly.
You're not for everybody. So like you just can't dwell on that too much. You just put yourself out there, and then eventually you're gonna find that right person. But like it doesn't, that rejection you got from the 10 other people, it is what it is. So like I think that's what I learned about myself is like, don't put all my hopes and dreams into this application. Just do it. If I get rejected, so be it.
Right.
I'm still going to live the way I've been wanting to live, do the things that I want to do, the projects that I want to do. So
yeah, because for me, I still have 2 years of school. Yeah. So it's like I'm still stuck in a positive way somewhere on a path, on an arc of my story. And then at the same time, I'm, getting the Adobe thing. Great. That might fast track the completion of this project, because obviously you'd have to complete something to show for it.
Right.
But if I don't, that just means everyone that I've included in the project so far will just have to wait maybe a little bit longer, because when it's personally financed, that's based around personal finances. That's based around personal time. Yeah. And so it's one of those where I was like, my goal was to kind of have it done by February. That wasn't like a aggressive deadline. It was a pretty feasible deadline. But what I didn't incorporate was the difficulty in pulling people's stories out of people's lives to incorporate them into a portrait.
So before you get into that, like, would you be open to sharing like what your project proposal will be?
So the whole project kind of conceptualized, it was about a year and a half ago. Was it 2019? Yeah, like 2017, like fall of 2017. I remember I'd gotten an email from a friend of mine who had basically, in the year prior, had been a part of a personal project that I'd shot. It was the first time I'd ever used studio lighting. I did it in my kitchen, just a one light setup, and did a real moody kind of black and white series. And then over the course of that year, I eventually colorized them, or just undid all the black and white, and kind of redistributed them to the folks that had participated. And so one of the girls who'd been part had basically sent me an email thanking me for being a part, one, but two, thanking me for kind of showing her the beauty that she saw in herself, that it wasn't something that she was naturally seeing, that it took a lot of her energy to basically kind of see herself as beautiful. And so the hour that I spent with her was encouraging enough that she finally saw what I saw, and she was happy to look into her portrait and go, this girl, if she only knew how beautiful she was, and like that kind of rhetoric. And I remember thinking that's a dramatic change in someone, for me to have someone in my studio or in front of my camera over the course of 10 minutes or an hour to go from really insecure to confident is always a fun transformation. But the significant eyesight and the significant viewing of yourself to go, hey, now I see kind of beauty in myself. That's a revelation in and of itself. And so that just kind of was kind of a transformative moment for me. And it brought back memories of previous conversations I'd had with friends. And ironically, over the course of the next year, so going into the 2018, I remember a friend of mine had jokingly just said something about my ears being cute. And I remember thinking, like, that's just weird. I remember having a conversation with her, and a couple of other friends were there, and some were guys, some were girls, and it was just a really interesting conversation how the girls were all in unison of saying, like, oh, your ears are cute. Now, for me growing up, I hated my ears. I hated kind of how I looked in photos, and how awkward I was because I was kind of bullied and made fun of them, because they stuck out more. They were larger than normal. So the Dumbo, the Rummelstiltskin, the house mouse, all this kinds of stuff. It just was basically a reoccurring not nightmare, but just, pin in my shoulder, kind of a thorn in my side. And so that did a really weird mental shift in me where all of a sudden it was like, oh no, okay, so there's an attractive quality about this. Interesting. And it really just started undoing a lot of negativity and kind of how I viewed myself, which coincided with being in front of the camera more with friends, and kind of developing my own little smize and learning how to just kind of be comfortable in front of the camera, even in a singular pose. And so all of this was just kind of starting to connect to itself over the summer of last year in 2018, where I realized that if this girl's transformation was really like learning how to see beauty in herself, like for me, a lot of it was kind of this self-hatred there that was like, hey, don't worry, one day you'll love yourself. Because it was all of a sudden at this moment, 34 years later, where I actually started enjoying myself, like how I looked and stuff, and to be as non-cliche as possible, that self-love, that's kind of a social media kind of thing where you enjoy posting pictures of yourself for the sake of milestones, and red letter days kind of stuff. So that was kind of this really rapid, if anyone's like a creative mind, they understand that they have these, large expansive thoughts that just kind of occur in microseconds.
Yeah.
And so all of that just kind of was exploding in my head over last summer, and connecting and finally kind of gluing together. And I realized that there was a prophetic nature to all of this, that I wish that I'd known what I knew now 10, 20 years ago. It would have done wonders for my psyche, for my self-worth, for how I viewed myself, my confidence, all these insecurities that I had.
Right.
And I remember thinking like, oh, what if people could share what they knew now with themselves 10 or 20 years ago? What would you share?
Yeah.
And so this idea of prophetic portraits just kind of came up, and it turned into kind of this, how would you give yourself a TED Talk? And then it expanded beyond that to go, well, if you're telling yourself that, well, then someone now obviously has the same problems. So what would you tell them?
Right.
How would you empathize with them?
Right.
And then how could we share this? And so I started thinking, well, what if we did a portrait? Well, that's cool, but then you need a story. Well, I don't want to write a story, because now you need different forms of medium, kind of separate from one another. You can't just post a Instagram picture and then a caption. Nobody reads the captions. And it's also finite.
Unless you're humans of New York.
Exactly, and then everyone just goes nuts.
Yeah.
And then it was a case where it's like, all right, well, I can put it on a website, but nobody clicks the captions. Nobody understands to click the captions. Mobile is different than desktop. How does this form? And so what I started conceptualizing was kind of an overlay format where half the portrait was just split in half, and people's taglines would just kind of split over people's faces, so that, don't worry, one day you'll love yourself would kind of reveal the other half of people's faces. So it would kind of be this hidden, revealing portrait, but on a more kind of intense, deep soul, kind of eyes, very consistent portraiture, ring light, kind of catch light, same backdrop, same coloring, everything just very uniform, so that you could put them all side by side.
So kind of taking all of that.
Yeah.
What would your elevator pitch be?
Well, it's a portrait project. The idea is, what would you tell yourself 10 years ago that you wish you knew now? How do you wish you could share your wisdom and your experience with your former self, so that not only are you sharing it with your former self, but you're sharing it with people in today's world? And how could you do that through portraiture, and through kind of a graphic design overlay, so that you create kind of a dynamic medium that can be shared, so that in easily digestible form, on an Instagram or website, you retain bits and pieces of your story, but on long form, side by side next to kind of more narrative stuff, you get the context of it, so that someone's tagline can be on their face, but the context of it can be side by side.
Okay.
And how would that look if not only is it digital but physical? So can you do it in gallery? Because what would be great is if you could gallery something like this, and create an immersive experience, so that 50, 75, 100 portraits are up on the wall with 100 different stories. Because now what you're getting is kind of the beautiful simplicity of kind of the human narrative in its intricate, infinite possibilities. Because now you're seeing, cancer stories and financial stories and self-image stories and suicide stories and sometimes joyful success stories, that people can relate to, or that people are going through and need some kind of breakthrough on, so that now they're experiencing some sort of revelation through someone else's portrait and story by seeing like, oh, I lost my mom, but I'm actually much stronger than I thought I was. And I wish that I knew that going through it then, that I would make it out, because right in that moment, I felt like everything was over. so it's that kind of stuff where you're going, hey, in hindsight, here's what I want to share. And here's how I can empathize with those that are going through it, so that on some level they're transformed by my transformation. Ding.
Ding.
And the elevator doors open up, and that's kind of the idea. So,
no, I'm trying to think of like, what would my elevator pitch be? Because I actually haven't looked at my application since last year.
It's a hard thing.
So I'm actually just pulling up last year's application where they had the separated questions. So summarize your project. Okay, we kind of did that. Have you thought of the details of your project? Because last year they were like, what's your 12-month overview? I think this year they're asking, what does your day-to-day look like? What is your that? Plus, do you also have like a budget thought out?
So
rough budget.
The budget that I would have had would have been completed in kind of the stuff I've already bought. So it's kind of a sense of I'm not quite there yet in the proposal.
Yeah.
Those are some of the details that I'm still working out. However, I would allude to the fact that it would be questions, either developing kind of long day full shoots, because for this project so far I've had 30 people that I've shot, 35 roughly. I've either shot them in breathers where I've just rented out a breather for the full day, or I've done kind of individual appointments in the studio in my home, where I've just had them come over and shot them there. With Adobe, I'm still not sure if it's a go into work 9 to 5 and work from there, or if it's, hey, I'm remote, like the traveling salesman, and so therefore whatever I have to incur, I'd incur. But that would be probably an easy one to say, a larger breather space. Cool, $300 a weekend, $400 a weekend, twice a month. The details basically turns into, physical form. It's, the paper, printing services, framing, and then whether or not you can get a team of 5 to 8 volunteers that are coming in helping you out, or if you have to pay people.
So I think for anybody looking to apply, I think those kinds of things,
this is the biggest part.
They want those details, so you 100%. Have to actually think it out.
And this is obviously this is one of the hardest parts, because you're obviously making up what you think you have to do.
And I think that eliminates a lot of super creative people who are like, oh, I can't put a schedule together worth my life.
Or they do all the work, and it eliminates them from the running because they're either just so outlandish and like, oh, I just need $50,000, and Adobe's like, wait, it's actually going to cost you $200. You don't know what you're talking about. Wait, you want to do like work from Maui? Okay. It's like, oh,
they said no, you shouldn't go out and like rent a WeWork now just because like you're working where you are, like you're not going to move to Maui or whatever.
Exactly. And I think it is it's very specific on locations. I think they're only allowing it if you work in certain locations.
No, well, yes, but they're opening it up more. It used to be just like maybe 2 residents.
Yeah, I think it's
when
like
it first
8,
started, but now it's like
6 or 8 or something like that.
8 last year maybe, and then now it's like maybe more.
Yeah.
They're opening up to a few more countries, I think, in terms of being able to apply. But yeah, that just means more people applying.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's for me personally, when I did my application, I did a lot of sit down and like put together that budget. And it's kind of interesting because like after I got rejected, I moped around. I was bummed for I don't know how long.
Woe is
after
me.
That.
It's like the Zazu scene in Lion King.
Yeah, but then like, the year unfolds and, I'm raising my first child and like we moved to a bigger space and through that, like we're in this space now. We have an extra room that became my home office / studio, and like, and now it's like, oh, I don't have to put that in my budget in terms of like, oh, I needed to rent a breather space or a studio for these portraits. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting how like, for me personally, like because my project was so personal and I wanted to do it anyway, it's like. Things are becoming aligned where it's like now I'm able to more and more do this, whether the residency is there or not. Of course, being in the residencies, that would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any words of encouragement in your own process of applying to this for any other applicants potentially?
I mean, yeah, I mean, but it's more just speaking to myself. It's my mind works a mile a minute, and it's very analytical. And so I storyboard and just hyper create all the, areas of, areas that I would be navigating or, things that I'd be saying. So there's all these different end goals and solutions and problems and things that I have to like pin, so it's like there's that meme of Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, who's trying to do the conspiracy theory, and there's just pins and strings everywhere.
Yeah.
It's kind of how my mind works when I get opportunities like this, because it's like, oh, I could do this, but that'll lead to here, and then that'll come all the way down here, and it's all these different things, and I have to like remind myself, hey, just stick to what you know, and stop romanticizing what could potentially be that already is, that's not yet, right? So it's kind of living in this, now and not yet kind of mode, right? There's the reality that I can see the completion of the project. I can see the completion of the project through an Adobe residency, but it's not contingent on Adobe being there for me. And so I think for me, it's a case of going, am I passionate enough in this project or in this work or in this application so that if Adobe says no, I will still do it. And I will give in
the off chance that they say no.
I mean, let's be real. It's gonna win. I'm like a 90% sure.
Exactly.
I know like Caitlin at the front desk, she's already put my name in.
Right.
So Caitlin, if you're watching this, that'd be weird if there was a Caitlin. She's probably like, wait, what? With this project, I'm obsessed with dark and light, right? But more so darkness, because I love people's dark side. I love the intricacies of the devastation in lives, because there always is an emergence of light. And there always is this revelation that people have in these dark times that really reveals true things about themselves and like the tenacity and the strength of themselves. And so this project is cool for me because I'm like, this is actually bringing out that really transparent, vulnerable side of people. And they're always really awkward, but then they get to see that they got out of it and that their darkness actually has a lot of strength, that these things that tried to kill them didn't, and that they're actually better for it in the event that Adobe says no. Yeah, I'll be pissed, and I'll probably punch a couple pillows and swear a few times and not eat for a few days, and then gorge myself on Domino's and Pizza Hut. But
and
like
video games.
Yeah, exactly, and just disappear into like virtual world. But like that's normal. I think there's an emotional attachment to the potential success. But it's not bent on that. You know, it's not dependent on Adobe saying yes.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I've tried to learn through that experience of not getting it. Was kind of the Gary Vaynerchuk approach is being happy in the process. Yeah. So like, not putting your happiness in that getting it or not. Right. It's putting your happiness in, oh, I get a chance to apply for these things. Right. And I'm happy that I have that opportunity because I'm happy that I have a project that's so personal to me that I can apply to these things. And there's an opportunity to make, follow that road. But if it doesn't happen, I'm still happy that I get opportunities to have and say something in this world.
And you have to think of it too like a job, right? If you're bidding on a job as a photographer, there's 4 or 5 other photographers potentially on the bid. It means you have a 20% chance of winning. So like you probably will get rejected a lot. Or you'll face rejection a lot, or the possibilities of it. So until you get to the point where you're okay with that.
Sorry about that noise. It's Penny playing with the new triangle band set toys. But anyway, just wanted to say thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for sharing about your project. I will share my own personal application after this. I didn't want to make this too long. So I will share my whole experience. And I may or may not apply again this year. We'll see. I probably should. A lot of people are applying for the first time, and last year was my first time, and just trying to find so much information and like reading all the articles, blog posts from previous, residents. It's like I needed like to see a template. I needed to see an application that made it, and like I don't have to copy it exactly, but at least like see the elements of like what might help my own application. So I think it really does help to see like what other people are doing. So I'm open to sharing what I did. It's not a winning application, mind you, but it's just, just like a marking point to see like how you can possibly adjust your application. So
great.
Anyway, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Always good to hang out with you in the city. And I think that's one of the things about photography and creative is you tend to be territorial. And
if you're in the South Bronx, it's my territory.
Yes. You tend to be territorial. You tend to be like protective of your ideas. But I just appreciate your friendship because like the opposite, it's counterintuitive to like be open with your ideas to other creatives.
100%. Yeah.
It's like, that's what you need. You need that community. So I appreciate your friendship.
Always.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, man.
All right. Till next time. See ya.